Hi, I'm Julie Riffe with Riffe International. I'm going to take you on a little adventure through town, meet some of my friends, and talk about the elusive white sea bass on our coast of California. Hunting the white sea bass takes some talent and some patience. The white sea bass is a very stealthy fish. They do cruise in packs, and a lot of times you'll find them solo. They like to hug up into the kelp beds and sometimes sleeping on the bottom as well. So you got to keep your eyes open and be very quiet in the water. Making any noise, clicking of your heels or bumping of your spear gun, even your sinuses, they can cause a fish to spook. So paying very close attention to hunting these fish on your personal posture and behavior in the water is a huge factor in success. I'm going to take you on a little adventure through town, and we're going to meet my friend John Warren. John Warren is a unique individual. He's an artist, he's a spearfisher, a gun maker, and he has been a friend of ours in the family for many years. I love his stories, I love his passion behind spearfishing, and he's got some great stories to share with you guys about hunting the white sea bass. Look at that handle.
Yeah, isn't that a piece of work? All stainless steel. But there's no safety. I mean, it's not a production gun.
Right,
it's
right. Really cool. Wow, look at this one.
Yeah, check that out.
Oh my gosh.
Now this is what I would call a blue marlin gun.
This is intense.
Here, pick it up, hold it.
Two handles.
Oh yeah. There's three handles actually.
Wait, how much? This is like 60 pounds, 50 pounds?
So I used to dive at one of the local kelp beds, and I'd take my aluminum boat and go 15 miles down the coast, just hunt by myself, just alone.
Right.
We called them mystic croakers. Years and years ago, we would dive and dive and dive, and we could never find white sea bass. We couldn't locate where they were, but occasionally you'd see one. And eventually, I learned to hunt in the thickest part of the thickest kelp bed I could find, on the uphill side of the current, because that's where all the bait stacks up, is on the uphill side of the current. And that's where we'd find the white sea bass. And it was important to don't take the boat and run the boat around and meter around with the outboard motor, because that just drives the fish away. So what you do is you come in from behind, anchor the boat, and then swim up to the head of the current at the front of the kelp bed.
Right.
And that doesn't scare the fish away. You just kind of wander into their environment that way.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Johnny.
Yeah,
and it was a pleasure coming to visit you.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, come anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Our next stop is the Dana Point Harbor. We're here to see Joel Olnik. He's going to tell us a little bit about white sea bass hunting on his beautiful boat. And he's an avid surfer, an incredible spearfisher, and works in the sports industry. Joel, do you want to fill us in a little bit about your experience hunting white sea bass?
Yeah, I mean, I've been diving for a while now, not super long, maybe like 12, 15 years, not like some of the older guys, but kind of like passion just started from surfing and wanting to do something on flat days. So then me and a couple buddies started diving and just shooting calicos and pole spearing, and then sort of went out on a couple trips out into the pelagic area and did some paddy hopping, like shot some like typical yellowtail and dorado, like first couple fish, and then sort of got introduced to white sea bass through a couple of my mentors, and guys like Bill McIntyre and Nate Baker, some older generation guys, sort of like mentored me through the beginning stages, and basically like became like a decade-long passion after that. Like after I saw my first sea bass and like shot my first sea bass, it's become like a I would say an obsession and like a lifestyle too. I mean, they're such a rad fish. They're so elusive and they kind of like just make you pay. They're pretty hard to like pinpoint where they're at early season, and then man, they're usually in cold, dirty, murky water. But sometimes you get these days that are just like glorious, top to bottom visibility. The fish are stacked up, and you're just sort of surrounded by like what seems to be so hard all of a sudden becomes so like easy, you know?
Yeah, and
When
that's what gives you the thrill to go. You know? Like it's so unpredictable. So Joel, tell me about your method of stalking the white sea bass.
Oh,
I mean, I know it could probably be top secret, but it's your style.
that's such a tough one because, I mean, you're like, I feel like sometimes stalking white sea bass, you're only as good as the fish that are around. An old timer told me, he's like, the most important thing about white sea bass, hunting white sea bass, is that there's white sea bass around. Because they're either there or they're not. And when they're there, sometimes it's funny, man. You're like, they'll come up behind you. Yeah. Like I've had a sea bass submarine me and like look up and there's a 60-pounder floating over my head, you know?
That's because you're so stealthy.
I don't know if it's because I'm so stealthy. I'm kind of kooky sometimes, but yeah, stalking them, I think the basics, you got to be quiet, you know, like kind of just creep through the bed. And I think it's like sort of like right when you really get into the season, it's like pinpointing where that bait's going to be, where that upcurrent edge is in the kelp, and kind of figuring out where those fish are migrating, where they're, you know, maybe meeting up.
And you know, I always also have to have like that positive vibe going in, because having a good time and knowing that it's the outcome, if you didn't catch a fish or did, it's still a good time.
Yeah.
But I think with a positive attitude going out, and sometimes luck is always on your side.
Yes.
You know?
Sometimes, yeah, you just got to enjoy the dive, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not really about even shooting the fish. Sometimes it's just fun to dive, especially those clear, pretty days.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't see a fish today, but I had a beautiful dive.
This is like our gardening, you know?
Yeah.
It's therapy.
It is therapy.
For our souls.
Yep.
Surfing. Our last and final stop is J&J Spearfishing with Damian Salerno. We're going to go through some gear. We're going to pick out the right gun for hunting white sea bass, talk about floats, fins, accessories that will fit your needs. So Damian, fill us in a little bit on choosing the right gear for hunting white sea bass.
So for sea bass, you got a bunch of different options here depending on how much you want to spend and where you are as a diver. So intro guns, I would go with something like a competitor 2X, 3X would be more ideal. More range is good, and more power. You get a little bit more range with this guy. And then the other guns that I would suggest would be something like a mid-handled Noko Oi, or even a rear handle, the Marauder 55. This is a great gun for sea bass. Right now it's rigged up inline where the bungee is connected here. Ideally, I would have a breakaway setup where the shooting line will come back down to the line release, and your shooting line would have a loop here and then attached to your float line, which 100 feet of float line is ideal for sea bass because they're gonna run and they'll get tangled in the kelp. So 100 feet of this float line, but because you're in the kelp, you don't want a big float on the end of that. You probably know because it gets caught up. So at the end of this, something to hold the float line up, small float like this, or a little bit of foam at the end just to keep the end up. And then the key part to sea bass diving for me is having a good weight belt with your setup. On the back of the weight belt, you guys just re-released your utility float, and these come in super handy for sea bass because you don't have a float at the end. When you're hunting, you want to say you shot your fish and it gets tangled up, and now you're keeping pressure on the fish. So instead of holding it yourself at the surface, you could take this out. You have oral inflation right here. If you could blow it up, you could save your CO2 canister, or you pull this string right here, and it inflates like that, and then you could clip it off with your tuna clip to your float line. Now you could leave the float line alone. It has pressure on it, and you can start doing your dives down onto the fish.
You know what I've done with that too at times? If you're trying to subdue your fish and you have that utility float, that's a double popper, so it's pretty awesome. So if you used one, you can actually engage the second one if your fish ties up at like 50 feet. And what I've done is connected it to like the slip tip, so it's actually right at the fish. So it'll help lift your fish up if it is tangled and you're trying to cut out the kelp or get that line out. And just make sure you don't cut your shooting line. That's key. And what other equipment would you package together in a new beginner diver?
Brand new diver. The most important equipment, I would say, is the mask and snorkel. Getting a good mask and snorkel that fit, that doesn't leak, doesn't fog up on you. Since we're in Southern California, wetsuit is pretty important. And then fins, a nice fin would be like the descender fin, plastic blade, long blade. It has a medium flex to it.
Well, awesome. Is there any other equipment that you think would be key to walk out the door with? Dive knife.
Dive knife.
And getting comfortable in the water is everything. If you're comfortable with the right gear, you're gonna have a good time. And that's most important, like Damien said. So there's so many guns to choose from the small guns to the larger guns, but you know, being educated by your local dive shop is most important, and knowing that you're getting the right gun. So ask a lot of questions. They're full of information, and do your research.
Hey, I wanted to introduce Ryder Devoe.
Hey, Julie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I know it's been a while, and I know things have been quite crazy, and you guys had a crazy COVID scare, but
Yep.
we're here and we're on Zoom, and I figured we'd meet up and hear some fish stories from you. And I know from pictures I've seen online and some brief stories that you've got some good ones. So to share that white sea bass Stoke that really gives people the drive and energy, the season's here, and I know that you're going to share something pretty cool with us. So if you have something up your sleeve that you'd like to share with the world, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I think I got a good one that you might be stoked to hear. So we get on the boat, we're on his buddy's whaler, and we're heading down south, and the conditions just weren't right, and just kind of normal for sea bass. It was cold. The water was super murky. We were just like, I don't know, like you could be super excited for diving for white sea bass, and then you get on the boat and then your mood could change like in a second, because you're just like, the conditions are horrible, but this might be good. I don't know. And so we get out there, and the first bed we dive is just like bad current, going the wrong direction, horrible visibility. We're just not seeing anything. And I'm just like, oh, here we go again. Another sea bass dive. Well, I kind of see how this one's going to end up going. And a couple other boats pulled up to that bed. So we're like, let's get out of here. Let's go try a couple other beds. And we hop in, same thing. And we're like, all right, we're going to go back north on this inside bed. And we're just going to check it out before we head back to the harbor. And it's got to be about, I'd say 11 at this point. The wind was already starting to pick up, and we head over there, and the guys on the boat, they're like, you know what, just you go check it in, Grom, like check it out, Grom, like we're going to sit on the boat and let us know how it is. And I was just like, all right. And I was going to hop in without my gun. And he's like, you know, just bring your gun just in case. And I was like, all right, sounds good. So I hop in, I'm swimming over to the middle of the bed, and I decided to just punch a dive to the bottom, just get the bubbles out of my suit. And I was about 5 feet from the bottom. I think I was at like 45 feet or something. And I look up, and there's two big white sea bass just right in front of me, like swimming straight at me. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I line up on one, and it just comes right in, maybe 2 feet off the tip. And I pull the trigger, and the thing just rolls over on his back. And I'm just like, oh.
Like a stone shot?
Yeah, stoned him cold. The shaft was just sticking straight out of his forehead. So I was like, oh my gosh. And then I swim up to the surface, and the thing's just just limp. And I swim back to the boat and everyone's like, or no, they're sitting on the boat and they're just expecting me to be like, oh, the viz is bad. And I just lift it up and they're just like, you got to be kidding me.
So
and
you
then,
went down for a test dive just to
yeah,
see what the conditions were like.
yeah,
And you come up from that breath hold with a massive white sea bass.
yeah. So I wasn't expecting it, but I was super stoked.
Shaka.
All right, let's go. Seabass season. Let's go. 2021.
2021 is going to rock. All right. Thanks, Ryder.
Yeah. Good talking to you, Julie.
You too. Ciao.